so glad you're here with me for this episode of the Unlock Your Blocks podcast. My name is Elyssa, and I'm really excited today to talk to you about something that has affected me my whole life. And I bet it affects you too, because you are here probably because you're a fellow people pleaser and high achiever and someone who's looking to get beyond those blocks. So I want to tell you some painful truth right now. Are you ready for this? I'm holding my hands out. We're going to hold hands. You probably think that your perfectionism is what is responsible for your high performance, and that if you get rid of it, it would be a bad thing. But here's the actual truth. Your perfectionism is actually hurting you. It's actually holding you back and keeping you playing small. And in this episode, I want to take a few minutes and talk about why that's happening, where it comes from, and what you should do instead. So essentially, perfectionism... Okay, there we go. Perfectionism, there's a way for it to release its hold on you. But in order to get there, we have to understand why it's happening, where it comes from, and what its agenda is. When you can understand what the agenda is behind any of your protector parts, any of your people-pleasing or perfectionism, anything like that, then you can actually figure out how to help them feel safe enough to release you. But first, I want to talk about where perfectionism comes from and really what it is. So perfectionism is sort of an intolerance for mistakes or anything less than perfect results. It's very results-oriented. Perfectionism started out in your life as a way to help you get your needs met. So if you think about it, when you come into this world and you are just like a helpless little baby and toddler and kid, when you see that you're getting a lot of attention every time you do something good. I mean, how many times do we hear adults tell children, good job, good job? So encouraging good performance is not in and of itself a problem, but when it's a pattern for the child as they grow up, they become, I'm all ready now. They become a bona fide adult perfectionist, and typically a people pleaser as well. So when a child lives in an environment where performance is the thing that's really stressed and doing something well with no mistakes is the goal a lot of times. So whether your parents put a lot of emphasis on grades or whether they put on a lot of emphasis on other things, if you had an instrument that you were learning, I took piano and you get points taken off in the piano competitions if you make mistakes on the notes. So actually mistakes are not tolerated. Maybe you learned that and there was evidence to go along with that. And so when that happens, we learn that, we need to keep repeating the instance where we got the most connection and the most accolades, because that is an actual need for us as children. We need that connection. We are born with an actual attachment center in the brain, and it grows more gray matter with eye contact and connection with the people around us. A close second to that true connection that's completely unconditional connection, unconditional love. A close second to that is getting patted on the back for performance. And so if you don't have unconditional worth and value and you're not unconditionally being celebrated in your family just for being you, not for just only for stuff you can control, not for the perfection of your performance. If you're only getting conditional affection based on how well you do at something, your little brain is going to immediately realize, okay, this is as good as it gets. So we have to get as much of that as possible to try and make up for this other unconditional love that we're not getting. Now, this is not to say that you have bad parents. This is not to say that, maybe you did, okay? But it's not to say, my parents were super loving. I never had any big T trauma when I was little. I never had abuse or neglect. I always had my needs met. And my parents definitely poured on the praise every time I behaved in the way that they wanted me to. And every time that I performed well. Doesn't sound like a problem, right? But here's the thing. I just had a client this week and she had such a good example of this. So her parents were very loving. They provided well for her and her siblings. They took care of things. When she had a need, they met it. And one of her parents was very, very strict about grades and performance. And this client of mine needed to be like the hardest worker in the room to get the most connection with mom and the most recognition from dad. When we learn that, the nervous system then becomes dependent on thinking that in order to get your needs met, you got to be the best at everything. And I've even had clients, even one person recently, who have said they quit a sport because they no longer were the best on the team at it, and she couldn't cope with not being the best at something, because the time that she got the most recognition, the most connection, the most attention from her parents was when she was performing the best at everything. So if we are learning then that to get your needs met and to have value, which is what this My parents thought I was valuable, and they told me that all the time. But my little brain thought that because I get the most praise when I'm performing perfectly, that must be when I have the most value. So if you learned that you have the most value, you get the most connection, you get the most of your needs met when you're performing high, then as adults, fast forward, here we are, as grown women who struggle with burnout. If you have to be the hardest worker and you have to always be perfect at things, it's a lot of work. We struggle with procrastination because if you can't do it perfectly, why start it? And why give yourself the full amount of time to do it? Because if you turn it in late, or if you couldn't do it until last minute, at least then you have an excuse for not being perfect. And then maybe you won't get rejected, abandoned, and eventually die is what your brain thinks is going to happen. So we also end up with tons of negative self-talk. If you are an imperfect human who is not allowed to be imperfect, we are going to go through life believing that we are the problem, that we are flawed. That was my whole life. The negative self-talk that took place in my head for so many decades was so toxic and so mean, and it's stuff I would never say to anyone else. You probably can relate to that if you're perfectionistic at all, because if you don't accomplish the end goal of perfection and the results that you're looking for, then your brain is going to be the one telling you, man, you're the problem. It's you. We also deal with depression and anxiety a lot more than people who don't deal with perfectionism as much. We don't have intrinsic worth. We never learned how to, for most of us, we never learned how to give ourselves value other than attached to our accomplishments. So we have performance-based self-worth instead of intrinsic self-worth that just automatically exists because you're a human, you're valuable, and you're worthy. So you see the problem then with perfectionism. I've had clients in the past say, well, I actually think my perfectionism is helpful. It helps me accomplish, it holds me to a higher standard. It's possible to strive for really high achievement without perfectionism. And in fact, if perfectionism is a part of your high achievement, it's going to come with all this other baggage that I just mentioned. And so it's better to let go of perfectionism, accept mistakes, and move forward so that it doesn't keep you stuck and procrastinating and trying to be small. So the other thing is perfectionists typically want to be the big fish in the small pond. And it's just because we learned that that's where we will get our needs met. So as an adult, you might find that you have kept yourself playing small. Maybe you're doing really, really well with your business or really, really well in your career, but it's not maybe fulfilling you as much as you want it to. And you're afraid to step out from that because what if you fail? That question is always in our mind as perfectionists. What if I fail? What if I fail? And it may not be cognitively that you're thinking that, but that's ultimately what your nervous system is worried about. Failure. What if I become a failure? And if I fail, then I'll be neglected or abandoned or rejected, and then I'm going to be out on the street. That's kind of where your brain goes with it. On a primal level, it only understands life or death threats. And so mistakes are a death threat for your nervous system. If that's the case, then that means that we need to really nurture the parts that are saying, oh, it's over. Your life is over if you make a mistake. And so if you're continuing to be in that perfectionistic cycle with that negative self-talk that just keeps telling you that you got to be more perfect, you got to do it better, you got to work harder, be better, do more, then you're going to continue to play small. You're going to only do the things you can do perfectly, and you're not going to be able to develop the growth mindset that is essential for every leader, every person who ever built something really beautiful and wonderful, a dream life, a dream career, a dream business, a family, whatever it is that's on your list of things that you want to do. The people that are really successful at it have a growth mindset. And a growth mindset says, know that we are aware of the fact that we only learn through making mistakes. The human brain does not learn through doing things perfectly. The human brain that is available to learn through mistakes will be the brain that learns the fastest and gets to the place of high achievement in a way that's very balanced instead of beating ourselves into submission. Another thing to keep in mind about the perfectionism mindset is that it is a shame-based mindset. So the shame core develops in a human at a very young age to believe I'm the problem if there's stuff around me that's going wrong. And somehow I should be able to, if those words go through your mind on a regular basis as an adult, you know that you have some shame-based stuff going on. It's not a bad thing. It's not a death sentence. It's literally just something to be aware of. It's a communication from your nervous system that it's trying to shame you into conformity with the behavior that it thinks will get you the most connection and the most needs met. But shame-based thinking, all it does is it helps you survive. Absolutely, actively stops you from thriving. Shame-based thinking keeps you in a shame-based spiral and actively stops you from thriving, even though it's helped you survive all those years. So what do? We've been programmed wrong. What's the solution? Okay, I got you. Don't worry. Okay, we're going to get to this. So deep breath, because sometimes this can be intense to think about. Just take a nice big deep breath with me. And that's step one to feeling better and to designing a life that is not shame-based and one that will actively help you thrive. So the first thing that you want to do, if you know that you're a perfectionistic person and you know that it's probably keeping you playing small, is to notice where you feel it in your body. Now, a lot of my clients, when we start working together one-to-one, or somebody that comes into the membership that's new, they'll say, like, I don't really know. I don't really feel anything in my body. I don't know what that feels like. That's okay. You just want to take a moment when you can tell you'll probably be overanalyzing and overthinking. That's how you can tell you're being perfectionistic, or you'll be procrastinating. Those are three pretty solid tells. So then recognize in your body, just drop into your body in that moment and just kind of see what your body feels like. So for me, my perfectionism tendencies kind of feel like a catch in my breath, like my gut kind of tenses up a little bit, and my heart it feels like it stops for a second, and I just kind of hold my breath like that. So if you can notice what the sensation is for you, that's going to be really super helpful to know when it's happening, and then you can kind of get to the bottom of it. So then the next thing you want to do is see if you can start to uncover the roots of where it started. And that's something that I do with my clients all the time. You're more than welcome to book your 15-minute free session with me, and we can do an Unlock Your Blocks focus call where we can figure out where some of this stuff came from. But you start exploring, where could this have started for me? What caused this in the beginning? Where did I learn? And maybe you even know already just by listening to this episode. You're like, oh yeah, I know exactly who implanted that idea in my head, and that's okay. So then you start exploring being okay with making some mistakes and doing things that are more motivated by inspiration rather than duty and obligation and trying to get the results that you're after. So you purposely start experimenting, maybe with art, or maybe with, allowing your things that you tend to have be perfect in your house. Like I love to have all my, I don't think I'm OCD, but I love to have all my labels facing out on stuff that's in the fridge and stuff that's in my cupboards. And so you can sort of experiment with, like, what if they're not? And someone comes over and sees it, like, are you perfectionistic about how your house is? Maybe you experiment with not folding that blanket and just see what it feels like. Now, if that's too much for you, that's okay. You might not be able to tolerate leaving the blanket unfolded and in a mess on the floor. And, I'm using such little small, examples. You might already be comfortable with that, but there are other things that maybe you would work with, allowing yourself to be imperfect. So doing things motivated by inspiration rather than for the perfect results, and just enjoying the things that you can and not expecting them to be perfect, is really important. Long term, what you want to do is you want to reparent the parts of you that are saying that you need to be perfect in order to have value. You reparent your worthiness, you reparent your value. And that just means you become a loving nurturer for yourself. Instead of looking outside of you for the validation, you start to look within you. And you have that within you. You absolutely do. You are here on this earth for a reason, because you have worthiness, you have value, you are deserving of being here and being fully comfortable in your skin and in your body. So I hope this was helpful for you today, just a tiny little sneak peek behind perfectionism. And I hope that you will come back next time. We've got a great guest lined up for you in our next episode. And feel free to go back and look at the topics of the other episodes. If you haven't watched from the beginning, we're covering all the procrastination, all the perfectionism, people pleasing, imposter syndrome, negative self-talk, all the stuff that's going to keep you stuck unless we uproot it together. So I'm really grateful you're joining me on this journey. And until next time, take such good care.